Finance Committee meeting to order. We have two bills on our agenda today. Both are for hearing only.
I'll see you later.
Yeah, you better stick around. This could be interesting. They look both to be very, very simple bills, but based on the lobbying activity I've been hearing, they've got a little more complication to them than meets the eye. I am going to start with Senate Bill 99. Senator Dolezal, if you will just briefly present this to the committee, let us know what you're trying to accomplish and what it does. Then we have a list of folks. We've got four speakers that would like to be heard on the issue, and we'll have questions for you as well. What is and you're welcome to do it from your seat. What's your microphone number? 10? Okay. All right, the floor is yours, Senator Dolezal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Present to you Senate Bill 99. I'm working off of LC 339327. Mr. Chairman, as you know, you've been here a little bit longer than I have. Rural healthcare has been a long-standing topic and priority under this bill in this building. And this bill is a way to almost immediately expand healthcare into rural Georgia. All that we do is we provide an exemption to the certificate of need laws for counties that are classified as rural counties, which is about a little bit over 50 counties in the state. And those are counties that have a population less than 50,000 people. You will see a number 8, actually, things that the hospital needs to provide. They need to provide inpatient hospital services. They need to participate in both Medicaid and Medicare programs. They need to provide healthcare services to indigent patients. They need to have at least 10% of their annual net revenue categorized as indigent care, file Form 990, or provide all the information that would be applicable if they did not file a Form 990, and a number of other things that you can read, and I won't belabor this. The last thing in the bill, lines 33 to 37, just outlines that if a county should no longer be a rural county and somebody makes the investment into a county that is a rural county, that facility will be allowed to remain open and that they would not be forced to shut down under this bill. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to kind of maybe zoom out a little bit and tell you the impetus of this bill. We have one particular county in Georgia that's currently served by, I believe, a 25-bed hospital that I think is over 40 years old, provides pretty limited care. It's primarily a rehab facility at this point. And this particular area of Middle Georgia obviously has a number of medical needs, as do most areas in the state. And that 25-bed rehab facility is just not meeting the needs of that area. We have some private money that wants to come in and build a 100-bed state-of-the-art hospital. And we think that that would be something that would serve the area very well, provide the robust types of services that Middle Georgia needs. This bill actually is passed out of Health and Human Services last year, and it has a new home this year. So I know this is perhaps a new topic to a few of you, so I'm happy to answer any questions. And I do know there are some folks that would like to speak as well, so I'm happy to defer to them, Mr. Chairman, whichever you'd see fit.
It's not a new topic to us. A few years ago, we had a pretty major CON overhaul bill that Senator Ben Watson was carrying that came through this committee. Didn't get it too far, but certainly enlightened us to the discussion points. Would this apply to any rural county that meets your definition of those 50 counties?
It would, yes. And it's actually, if you look at the bill, point you to the line, it's not my definition of a rural county, but that's outlined in code section 31-8-9.1. And essentially the metric of that is that 50,000 population threshold. And
would that allow these type of hospitals in counties that already have hospitals?
Yes, this would be a full exemption to CON for those hospitals, for those counties.
Other committee members have questions for Chairman Dolezal. All right, we have 4 speakers lined up to speak on this issue. The first will be Ms. Anna Adams from the Georgia Hospital Association.
Oh, there we go. Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Anna Adams with the Georgia Hospital Association, And for the education of the committee, we represent about 150 hospitals in the state of Georgia, including small rural all the way up to large urban system facilities. I appreciate the opportunity today to speak on this bill, and I am glad to hear that we are all focused on helping rural hospitals and helping those rural communities have access to healthcare. After consideration this week with our board of directors at the Georgia Hospital Association, we would like to continue to have discussions with the author and with interested parties until we can really understand the effects of this legislation and how it would impact each individual rural county. So today I am here to ask you to allow us to continue those discussions, and we will be happy to come back and share with you our findings on those rural communities and the impact on that after we've had the opportunity to do that.
I need a little help on what the definition of acute care hospital is.
Okay, so an acute care hospital provides inpatient services. They have an emergency department. It would be different from, for example, a psychiatric facility, which does those specialty services.
And Senator Dolezal mentioned that the other hospital that has 25 beds, it's open now as a rehabilitation center. Can you sort of define for us the difference? I want to make sure these aren't in direct competition.
So by our estimation for this particular area, what we know about the area, there are about 8 hospitals in close proximity to the location for this particular facility. They are not all rehab facilities. And I think that you have testimony coming later from a representative from the facility that does offer rehab services in that area. But some of the other facilities that would be impacted are acute care hospitals.
And do you know how close those are? Or are you going to leave that to another speaker?
The 8 that I know of are all within a 35-mile radius, and we use that because that's the current certificate of need opposition barrier. So if you want to oppose a certificate of need, you have to be within that 35-mile radius. I don't know the exact mileage, but I do think that the next speaker does.
Okay. And do you know whether or not a certificate of need application has been filed for this facility?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Other committee members have questions for Ms. Adams? All right.
I have
Well,
one.
you've got one. I recognize the majority leader.
Probably would have been for the sponsor, but I'm hearing you talking about a specific location, but this applies statewide if we pass this bill as it is. 50 counties.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct? Okay. So,
It would apply to any county per the senator's recommendation of 50,000 or fewer.
okay, thank you.
Other questions? Senator Harbison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question. Maybe you said it, I didn't hear it for the author of the bill. Would this acute care facility do acute care facility accept Medicaid and Medicare patients?
Required to.
Required. Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Ms. Adams? All right. Senator Lucas.
Has CMS removed the 35-mile radius?
That's-
You're not asking me. You're
That's a
asking.
state requirement. The state certificate of need law has a 35-mile radius when you consider.
CMS has had a 35-mile radius too in dealing with rural hospitals, because there's a bunch of money supposed to come down now. And in their regs, it had a 35-mile radius. And so my question is, have they gave up the 35-mile radius? Have they removed it?
I believe what you are referring to is the critical access hospital designation, which has that 35-mile radius in those regulations. That's different from this certificate of need requirement. So they're separate designation statuses. That does still exist though, from a CMS critical access hospital perspective.
All right. That appears to be all the questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Leo Reichert from Wellstar.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. I've got Tamara Eisen with me. She is actually the president of Wellstar Spalding Hospital and also has oversight of the Sylvan Grove Hospital, which is the one that was referred to as a rehab facility. So she can answer questions about what we do at that facility. It is an acute care facility too that does, just to let you know, as a starting point, have an emergency department that sees 14,000 people a year in addition to the rehab services that it provides.
And what is your role, Mr. Reichert?
I'm Executive Vice President and General Counsel at Wellstar Health System.
All righty.
And we operate as the senator mentioned, this bill, the genesis of this bill is in a specific location, and we operate 2 hospitals that would be dramatically impacted by this, as we believe other hospitals around the state would be dramatically impacted by this. We appreciate the concern about rural healthcare, and we share that concern and want to find the right fix for it. We don't believe this bill is the right fix for it. We have been in discussions with folks in Butts County and in Jackson and then in Spalding County, where we provide healthcare, to work on the future of healthcare in those counties. And since we've owned those facilities, have made some substantial investments, and Ms. Eisen can explain those investments. The threat of a new hospital coming and landing right there in the middle of it is going to cause significant harm to those 2 facilities. There's nothing else that can happen. There aren't that many folks there. There aren't that many admissions there. And so the necessary impact on this is going to be to financially harm 2 hospitals, including one that's owned by the local community. Sylvan Grove is a hospital that we operate pursuant to a lease with the local hospital authority. And I point out the hospital authority is not here asking for this legislation. These are some private individuals that we've been having conversation with. We have the support of the hospital authority and have had those conversations and hope to continue to have those conversations, because we believe that we, with those 2 facilities there, are best situated to help shape the future of healthcare in that community. So we look forward to that continuing dialogue and have offered to continue that dialogue. In addition to the harm that this would cause simply by taking patients away from hospitals that are already struggling financially because they're in areas that are not growing very much economically. We all know that there's a workforce problem in healthcare generally in the state, but in healthcare in specific. We've got 2 hospitals that are struggling to find staff to meet the needs of the community now. If you drop another hospital in, what's going to happen? They're going to wind up all 3 fighting for the same staff, and they're obviously going to take some staff away from those 2 hospitals. That's going to be critically important. It's also, we've met and looked at this to see whether it's even financially feasible to put up a hospital there. The level of investment for a 100-bed hospital is about $250 million. And it is difficult. We've conducted a study to see, is there any way to even make this work? If every person who needed care in that area came, could you make that financially feasible? And the answer to that was no. And we've shared those results with the folks who are interested in this, and again, have sought to engage in conversation about that. The difficulty with this legislation is it forces us to make, some really horrible, tough decisions. Like, again, if you plant a hospital down there, or if you just every year threaten to plant a hospital down there, put yourself in Wellstar's position. Would you invest a lot of money in those communities if somebody's going to get a pass to come in without going through CON, without any analysis of the impact on the competing facilities, without any analysis on the community whatsoever, stressing those resources, stressing a workforce that you don't have enough? Does that make any sense? I would suggest to you that what it does is it puts us in an untenable position of deciding we're either going to invest and potentially just invest money that there's no possibility you ever get a return from, or not invest. And those other communities are going to be harmed. So we're talking about trying to help rural healthcare. This has an adverse impact on those counties that are adjacent to rural healthcare. Spalding County is going to be harmed if this happens. And I would suggest to you, you indicated and recognize that this has statewide applicability. Think about every county that is adjacent to every rural county that qualifies for this, and somebody just coming in and dropping a hospital where they want to in that county for maximum impact, potential benefit for them, which is going to have maximum potential harm for those other counties. So I urge you to think very carefully about the statewide impact that this is going to have. Again, we look forward to continued discussions about the future of healthcare in that area. We want to be a part of that. We think we're the right people to be a part of that. We hope that the legislature is not involved in picking winners and losers down there and allowing somebody to just come in and parachute in without having to go through the process.
Yeah. Well, you need to realize we have been beat up for about the last decade for not doing enough to help rural hospitals. And we're told that they're closing, and we got to give them money and help them so that we can have access to medical care for people in rural areas of the state. Here we got people offering to build for free, no cost to the public, a 100-bed hospital in an area that has a 25-bed hospital that would service a lot of rural Georgia, and yet the hospitals seem to be opposed to that. You got to dig a little deeper and help explain to us why that's harmful for us to answer the needs of our citizens.
I-
Back me up to the Sylvan Road Hospital. Wellstar operates that?
That's correct, pursuant to a lease with the local hospital authority.
So is that Butts County Hospital Authority?
Yes, sir.
All right, that's the 25-bed facility?
That's correct.
Okay, and are you doing that at a profit or are you losing money doing that?
I think there's a small margin on Sylvan Grove.
Okay, and what's the second hospital that this would impact?
Spalding Regional Medical Center in Griffin, Georgia, which is about 10, 12 miles away from the location that's proposed for the new hospital.
And who runs that one?
That's ours as well.
Okay, so you would be the person objecting this because it competes with you.
That's correct.
How big is that hospital there at Paulding County?
In Spalding County, it's 160 beds.
Okay. That's in Griffin, Georgia, I guess. then?
That's correct.
All right,
That's correct.
okay.
And that's part of our point is that you've got a community, you're talking about 10 miles apart that are served together. And we don't want to help one community and have this happen and then have the unintended consequence of harming another community. If you put this hospital, new hospital, right where you're talking about, again, with nobody worrying about the impact on Spalding, you're going to harm Spalding. There aren't enough doctors, there aren't enough nurses, there's not enough patients. These hospitals are going to wind up competing. If that's what happens, then the Spalding facility is really going to be jeopardized. The only way the newer facility is going to work is if it hires away the doctors, hires away the nurses, and destroys a hospital that's been in that community for 120 years serving those patients and is supported by that group. The other thing I, again, would ask you to recognize is there is a local hospital there, Sylvan Grove, that is operated by a hospital owned by a hospital authority. Those members are selected by the public, and they're not here asking for this. In fact, their hospital that they're proud of, that they've invested in, that provides care that we can talk about, would also be adversely affected by doing this. Their investment in the community, their rehab hospital.
Well, we hadn't heard from them. Do they object to a 100-bed hospital to serve their county's population?
I don't know the nature of their discussions with Mr. Jones. I think they share the vision of trying to improve healthcare, but they also recognize that there would be adverse consequences to what's going to Spalding and otherwise. And so I think what we'd like to do is try and continue those conversations and find a solution that works for both counties and that doesn't jeopardize one for the benefit of the other.
So tell me about your conversations. Who are you speaking with on this issue?
We've had
You say you've been having some conversations. Is that with the hospital authority or the private developers?
the private developers who are interested in building the hospital.
So are you being asked to help run that hospital or why would you be even consulted?
I'd be happy to discuss with you. I prefer not to discuss private
Okay,
conversations in this forum. If you'd like, I'd be more than happy to
That's
sit
fair
down
enough.
and explain that to you because we've been engaged in those conversations for more than 2 years. And in none of them has there been any mention to us of the ability of private funding to help with any part of that hospital funding, which would obviously impact that.
is Wellstar a for-profit corporation or a
It is
not-for-profit?
absolutely not for profit.
Okay. How many facilities do you operate or manage or own?
We have 8 hospitals and about 350 care sites total. We employ about 1,100 physicians. And so we've got ambulatory, care sites, physician practices, and those sorts of things.
Are you the guys that shut down Atlanta Medical Center?
We were the ones that were forced to close it, unfortunately, yes. due to
How many
financial
beds was
circumstances.
that?
It is operated a little north of 200 beds.
And that was closed down because it was not profitable?
Not because it was not profitable, because it was not financially sustainable. We were performing the same services that Grady performs with exactly the same patient load. And we're getting no support from the county for that. The county doesn't support Grady enough and didn't want to provide us any support for that. So yes, we lost $100 million there last year. We operate safety net hospitals in all of our communities. We're the safety net provider. We're the largest provider of indigent charity care in the state by far. And unfortunately, we had to make a very tough decision in that one market.
So what is your commitment to Butts County Hospital Authority? How long is your contract to run that Sylvan Grove Hospital, Sylvan Road?
Our contract with them expires in 2026.
Other committee members with questions? I recognize Senator Brass. Are you at seat number 2, Senator? 4. Wow.
Well, actually, I got 1, 2, and
1, 2,
4.
4.
For my big mouth, I might need all 3. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. So from what I'm hearing, Wellstar is going on record saying that building a hospital 1 county over from a current hospital is a bad idea.
I'm saying building one 10 miles away from it is a bad idea.
How far is the site in Columbia County from all the hospitals in Richmond County?
20 something miles.
20 some, so 10 miles to 20 miles is okay, or 20 miles is okay, 10 miles is not okay.
It's going to depend on the facts and circumstances. And the Columbia Hospital facility went through the certificate of need process. They applied, they had the need analysis done, they had the impact on existing providers was looked at. And after all that was done, it was decided that it was in the best interest to put it in that location. We don't have the Columbia County Hospital. But that's what was done there.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes. Ready.
You made a statement, and I didn't understand it, so I'm not leading with this question. If you could just restate, you said you've been in conversations for a couple of years, and I believe I heard you say you've never heard about private investment or anything like that. Is that what you said?
Yeah, no one has ever offered support to us in the terms of private investment to build a hospital or to partner with us in those ways.
So when I had this bill in Health and Human Services last year, and I referenced the donation of land, and I referenced that it was all private money, that was the first you had heard of that?
I was there, and as I explained at the time, that offer had not been made to us at the time. And in follow-up conversations, it still has not been made to us. I've heard discussion of it, but it's not something that's been discussed with us. No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? All right. Thank you for being with us.
I would, if you don't mind, this is Tamara Eisen, who also signed up and can tell you a little bit more about those facilities than I can.
That'd be fine. Please introduce yourself again and let us know your thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tamara Eisen, I'm the hospital president for Wellstar Spalding and Sylvan Grove. And as Leo has stated, this facility would be detrimental to the Spalding location for many reasons, as Leo expressed, the workforce, the physicians, our community. Since we became part of Wellstar in 2016, Wellstar has had over $50 million in capital investments for improvements to our facilities, for new programs, equipment, et cetera. One new program that we just started in July of last year that has significant impact to our communities is our graduate medical education program. We have a class of 10 internal medicine students that came in July. We have a second class coming in July of this year to expand our physician workforce across our community, as well as just, again, benefits to the overall community. So significant investments. I would like to share the Spalding County Hospital Authority, again, which is separate from the Butts County, is in opposition of this bill. And when I close, I would certainly like to take a moment and read a letter from our Spalding County Hospital Authority in opposition of this. As you heard from Leo, this location is within 10 miles of the Spalding Acute Care Facility. And again, just can't explain enough the impact that would have, not only for our hospital, our workforce, but for our community. I would like to take a moment now and read this letter, if you don't mind, from our Spalding County Hospital Authority.
That'd be fine.
As members of the Spalding County Hospital Authority Board, we are writing to express concerns regarding SB 99, a bill that eliminates certificate of need review for new hospitals in rural counties across Georgia. If passed, SB 99 could have significant consequences for hospitals in adjacent counties like Spalding County. Wellstar Spalding Regional Medical Center is an example of a hospital that would likely suffer devastating impact from the unchecked construction of new hospitals in rural counties. Spalding is a 160-bed acute care facility that has faithfully served the community for 120 years this September, and is one of the county's largest employers. Since acquiring Spalding in 2016, Wellstar has committed to bringing world-class healthcare to our community and the surrounding areas. Wellstar has invested significant financial and other resources into the hospital as well into the community, including over $50 million in capital investments for equipment, service expansion, and hospital renovations. In addition, Wellstar has developed a new graduate medical education program for primary care at the hospital that will help recruit much needed physicians to our area and other areas. SB 99 would permit the construction of a new hospital in Butts County, not far from Spalding, 10 miles, just over the county line off Interstate 75, without any review of whether that new hospital is in the best interest of the community and without considering the impact it would have on our community. The new hospital would have a direct and devastating impact on the continued viability of Wellstar Spalding by diverting our patients, our physicians, and also our community support from Wellstar Spalding, making it difficult for the hospital to remain financially viable to continue to serve our community. A new hospital would also lead to even greater staffing shortages at Spalding. At Spalding, Spalding is not alone with these negative efforts would be felt by hospitals across all Georgia in rural and non-rural areas. When community hospitals are stressed, communities suffer. As leaders with the responsibility of ensuring high quality care is delivered in our community, we are opposed to SB 99. Thank you.
And that's from a hospital authority that sold their facilities to Wellstar, no longer own the hospital.
No longer on the hospital. That's correct. Sold it prior to Wellstar.
Okay, so they got out of the hospital business, but they're objecting to hospitals coming into their area.
Coming into our community, correct?
Isn't the hospital authority's sole function to provide medical care for their citizens?
Yes, it is. And again, we're currently doing that. And again, this is this proposed location is within 10 miles of our
Right.
facility.
You are, but the Paulding County Hospital Authority is not, because they sold their hospital to another entity that later turned around and sold it to you.
Correct.
Okay.
They no longer provide hospital services directly. They have, as a result of those proceeds, they have funds to invest in the community and other healthcare resources. And they work with us on some things. There's some financing things they can do to help a local hospital and so forth. So they are a player in the healthcare space, though they no longer own the hospital.
Has anybody heard from Butts County Hospital Authority on this issue? Y'all hadn't?
So again, as Leo explained earlier, we've had conversations with Butts County Hospital Authority. I attend those meetings and we're continuing those conversations. They did not directly push for this bill. So again, we're
Who
continuing.
is the chairman of that, Butts County?
Zach Sowell, Sowell.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you all for
Thank you,
taking the
Mr.
time to
Chairman.
be with us. All right, one last speaker, Tim Kibler, and then we'll move on to SB 95. Mr. Kibler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Tim Kibler with the Georgia Alliance Community Hospitals. We're a 85 hospital member voluntary association of Georgia's not-for-profit hospitals. We do have some concerns with the proposal before the committee at this time. And much of those were just shared with you from our colleagues from Wellstar, and I don't tend to repeat those. I do want to repeat the one about workforce. I think you all have heard from most of the medical community over the course of the last couple of years that we have a profound workforce shortage of doctors, nurses, techs, CNAs, virtually every provider in that space. Georgia has a significant deficit. Were the state to have this proposal become law, it would be very much a case of internal providers fighting each other for staff, people not knowing necessarily on Friday if they're going to have staff on Monday. It's a great fear of hours. And we very much would urge you in the other roles that some of you serve to assure that we have the opportunity for students to pursue those careers. And I'm going to urge those of you that are on appropriations to pay particular attention to a couple of line items in there that the governor's put in to increase the likelihood that we'll have additional providers. Independent of that, we do have a concern about the broad application of the bill. the senator said that he thought it was about 50 counties. The way I understand it, the way we understand it, it's going to be about 120 counties. This is a map from the State Office of Rural Health. All the counties in blue are rural counties under the State Office of Rural Health. And you see that many of them, there's about 50 that are marked in red here that don't have hospitals. And maybe that's where the 50 number came from. I don't know. But it certainly, this is an attempt to address a specific situation that is going to have broad and far-reaching implications much beyond that specific situation. We would echo, I think, what Wellstar said, that we would hope that there be opportunity for the impacted parties, the proposed developers and the hospital authority and the current hospital to have an opportunity to have a negotiated settlement that would potentially be beneficial to all the parties that are involved, and think there is still a pathway to that opportunity.
Let's talk about that real quick because we're on a pretty short shot clock here in the
Yes, sir.
legislative session, and
Yes,
we're
sir.
literally 6 committee meetings away from crossover day.
Okay.
If you have specific suggestions as to how to narrow the scope of this bill so it doesn't rock the world around the whole state, but addresses this proposal and or
Yes,
maybe
sir.
just
Yes,
those
sir.
50 counties, you don't have to give them to me right this moment, but would you please try to get those to me or Chairman Dolezal so that we could tweak this bill? a bit?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. We're glad to try to do that.
Appreciate
We're
it.
glad to try to do that.
Okay. Other questions for Mr. Kibler by any committee members? Senator Brass, Mr. Rules Chairman Brass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tim, thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
In your experience, I know you've been doing this a little while, of your 85 facilities that y'all represent, and I know you focused today on workforce shortages. In your experience on these facilities, do you think, or have you seen where newer facilities, more state of the art, maybe have a little more of a draw for workforce than maybe
Absolutely.
some of our?
Yes, sir, they
Okay.
do.
All
I
right,
mean,
thank you.
absolutely. There's there's many things that go into the decision that a healthcare provider would make about where they want to go to work. But certainly having a brand new facility is something that a lot of folks are attracted to. There's other issues, family location, commute times, et cetera, et cetera. One of the big issues is one that we're all very familiar with, which is what is my compensation? So there's, absolutely, but absolutely newer facilities do attract folks. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of parts of Georgia that could use a new facility and would not necessarily have the repercussions that the potential proposal we're talking about here may have. In addition to the Wellstar hospitals, there's a critical access hospital in Jasper County and critical access hospital in Monroe County that both could be negatively impacted should this proposal move forward.
Thank you.
All right, other committee members with questions? Okay, thank you so much for being with us and thank all of you for sharing the insights.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
On this bill. We will keep it under advisement. Look forward to any communications that you might have. Feel free to stop by my office. And Tim, could I get you to give me that map you got?
Absolutely.
Unless you got secret notes on that.
No, sorry.
Give us 2 of them so Senator Dolezal can have one. Oh, wait, Senator Dolezal wants to add 2 things. I thought he wanted 2 copies. If you can just leave that on the table, we'll get it. Thank you.
Okay, am I still a witness or am I?
No, I don't have any questions for you, Tim. I was just gonna maybe just.
We
add
were
couple
a
of
jury
things.
in here yesterday, but today you're not a witness. You're just testifying.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I may have misspoke, and I just want to clarify this just for the good of the committee. It's 54 rural hospitals that would potentially be impacted by this. If I said counties, I simply misspoke. And I'll just maybe add this as my own personal opinion, but if we're going to make the argument around community harm and considering community harm, I wish that would extend to all business decisions made by the entities that want to argue on the basis of community harm. And I think that the state could be well served if that was more broadly applied as to when it's only applied in one direction. I do have, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to share with the committee a resolution from the Board of Commissioners from Butts County. And this passed last year, and it was when this was the House bill that was referenced earlier. But what I would just read is one paragraph to you all that says Sylvan Grove Hospital is an existing 60-year-old rural 25-bed critical access hospital in Butts County that serves Butts and approximately 9 surrounding counties in Georgia. The services offered at the hospital are very limited and do not meet the ever-increasing needs of our citizens. And that, Mr. Chairman, is really the impetus of this bill, is not to hold on to an archaic system of anti-competition or anti-access or whatever you might call certificate of need. We probably would all call it different things. But this is an attempt to deliver healthcare to this much needed area. And this is signed by Joe Brown, who's the chairman of the county commission in Butts County.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll go call. I don't see Senator Robertson as our whip here. Come on in there, my friend. We have your bill is next up, Senate Bill 95. I'm going to let you speak from the podium if you'd like to, so you can be on TV. You're so. No, you're in the paper twice today. I thought you were liking the camera. I was trying to save about 30 minutes for each bill, but we're going to be a little tight, but I want you to know, Mr. Whip, that we will have adequate time if we don't get there by today to hear this in more detail. There'll be no votes. We'll just
Mr. Chairman,
let us know what you got.
yes, sir. Your conversation that you and I had earlier this morning was greatly appreciated. And I think you understand where I'm coming from on this, and I appreciate the opportunity for a hearing only today. But just briefly, and my sweet mate, who's been my sweet mate since I was elected, when he's brought up something, and I want to put it in the forefront of everybody's minds, because we are talking about community harm here. And I know there's been a lot of lobbying going on since last year, and sadly, no one has come and approached me about the legislation other than the individuals that have the same concerns that I have about this. And I get a little bit confused when other environmentalists don't come and approach a conservative environmentalist who has all of Ed Abbey's books, and including Monkey Wrenched and everything else, and have read them. And all I want is a clean environment. But what I'm reading off of is LC 510288, Senate Bill 95. And in 2018, Senator Chuck Hufstedler, along with Representative Jay Powell, proposed a constitutional amendment, which was passed by 82% of the voters who participated in that election. This amendment passed because our citizens were told that when they went and bought 4 new tires on their car, that $1 from each of those tires was going to be used to clean up tire piles, which still plague our state. I had some real solid numbers last year on the number of tire piles that we had around the state. And these are piles of tires that can be anywhere from 25 to 200-300 and on up. And the numbers we had last year, we were able to present last year. We've reached out to EPD for the latest numbers, and we have yet to receive those numbers. But it was to clean up those tire piles, remove all the abandoned tires from yards and other places that we see throughout our districts, including some of the streams and along the Chattahoochee River and mine. The citizens were also told that this money, part of this $1, would be used to not only clean up emergencies that happen at our landfills, but to be set there. So when those emergencies that we all know are going to happen, that we'll be able to get out there quick and address them. If there's a leak at a landfill, we've had several bills over the last few years dealing with coal ash and unlined landfills and other things. And that's another reason that the citizens were told that this $1 would be used. And then they were also told that the $1 would be used for abandoned landfills, that the proprietor just realized there was no more money in it, or it was full, and they just took off and left it to the responsibility of the state. And then another kind of landfill that sometimes gets forgotten about, but illegal landfills. And these are where builders and developers and others go into the woods near wherever they're building, and that's where they throw all the waste product on what they feel or land that could not be developed. And then once they're finished, they pop smoke and get gone, and leave the responsibility of the abatement of that landfill to the state. And the funds to do that come out of this $1 also. These funds can, speaking of the abandoned landfill, I have a landfill in Catawba, Georgia, that's probably 5 mile, well, probably 3 miles from my house, that's back in the woods, that's probably been burning for the last 2 months, to the point that the fire department in Harris County are being paid off-duty wages to go out there and put water on this landfill to try to get this fire out. And these types of funds can be offered to the communities, to the counties and others to assist with this. And all of that sounds really good. What this money was not intended to use, or what the citizens were not led to believe that this money was intended to use, are on all these litter abatement programs. And I want to be clear, litter abatement programs are extremely important to our counties and our cities. And there are other funds that money can be drawn from to address these types of programs. But what the dollar was not intended to be used for, what the citizens were not led to believe in this constitutional amendment, was that this dollar was to be used to promote all of these local, keep Catawba beautiful, keep Hamilton beautiful, keep Pine Mountain beautiful programs. That's not what it was intended to be used for. As we look through the monies, the way they're being used now, and if you'll notice in LC 510288, the small adjustments that I've made in the bill refocuses the fund on what it's supposed to be used for, and that's the rubber tires. But as we look through, according to the best numbers we could get, and I'm not sure if, how many folks are here from EPD. They do a great job with not enough folks, but finding the exact numbers are extremely difficult for a state senator. So I can't imagine how difficult it is for the average citizen, the average environmentalist or garden club throughout the state of Georgia who may want to know this information. But as best I can determine at this point, in FY 2022, $7.6 million, excuse me, $7.6 million were collected. 2.8 million were appropriated. If I'm saying this right, I believe I am. But out of the 2.8 that was allocated, approximately 674,000 was used by the counties and the municipalities for tire abatement. That is a minuscule amount. And as a side note, last year on this legislation, we were attempting to move the $1 collection from the retailer to the wholesaler, as we do on many other situations very similar. And by doing that, we would have collected an additional $3+ million, because the vast majority of the monies collected are done through good retailers who basically do it because they know it's the right thing to do. But when you sit down and talk to this multitude of retailers, you'll find out that every one of them know of 5 tire stores or tire shops that are not sending the $4 per car or $1 per tire to the state in the way they could. And when we spoke with EPD last year and discussed this, we understand that with the staffing, doing it from the wholesaler, which the wholesalers were full on last year, would have increased the amount of money. But as a sidebar, but the primary focus is what we see with the $674,000 is that a minuscule amount of this money is being used for what I say it's intended to be used for. So, Mr. Chairman, I have Allie Kelly with me, and I think everybody here that knows anything about clean energy or tires knows Allie Kelly. But and of course, Allie's prepared to testify, but understand, and Chairman, you and I served on the EV study committee together. Our tire problem is bad, but it's going to get a whole lot worse, because that beautiful F-50 I drive with that internal combustion engine on it, it goes through a few tires. But if it were electric, I would be going through many, many more tires because of the torque that's required to turn the tires on an electric vehicle. And so the amount of tires that we're going to start collecting here in Georgia is going to be much greater. And we have retail industries right now in Georgia that make their money off collecting and recycling tires. But we've got to do our part by using this money for what it's supposed to be used for, and that's tire abatement. There are monies out there to handle these other litter abatement programs. And we also, and I want to emphasize this, put the responsibility back on corporate America that creates the litter that strows up and down the sides of our streets and highways. Because if you create a plastic bottle, if you birth it, you need to plan on its funeral also. And whether that's a penny per bottle or whatever else, you need to do that. One group that does a great job on litter abatement, I do want to give them a shout out, is the Department of Transportation. I think we've all seen the Keep Georgia Beautiful signs all over the place, or Keep It Clean Georgia. And DOT, not only do they go out and mow and everything, but they pick up every piece of paper and every bottle that they can encounter because they understand the importance. And I will tell you this, they do not get one single penny out of this fund. They pay for it out of their allocated funds. And that's what we would encourage other businesses to do, other programs to do, because those funds are out there and available. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a quick and dirty oversight, and I'll yield for any questions or yield for any other witnesses.
I am short, but let me just sort of sum your bill. If I'm looking at page 1 here on line 16, you're taking out specific uses that are now being used by the Solid Waste Trust Fund.
Yes, sir.
You've scraped solid waste enforcement programs, solid waste, including without limitation, the prevention and abatement of litter.
Yes, sir.
So you don't want any of this money to go for litter or solid waste. You want it to go solely for the scrap tires and recycling type industry.
Yes, sir. Until we can get our arms around the rubber tire problem that we have, the castaways and everything, I think our full focus needs to be there. And once we solve that problem, then I think that's another conversation. And there's several statutes, 12.8, there's a couple of places in 12.827, 12.837.1, and other places that have some language that have been added to try to, and not to try, to circumvent the original intention of the Solid Waste Trust Fund. But there are other sources for them to gather this. I would love for this money right now at this point to be used strictly for the abatement of tires.
All right, get your pen out, Mr. Whip. I need you to help me do a little research. I kind of came across this afternoon as I was working on a constitutional amendment that would dedicate funds from horse racing proceeds. Our good friend we all loved and admired was Representative Jay Powell, who's no longer with us, but he had House Resolution 164 a couple of years ago. That was a constitutional amendment because we were having problems with these tire funds not being used at all for what they needed to be. We had some budget troubles back then, the opposite of what we're facing now. We didn't have enough money. We were raiding these trust funds to keep the doors open of schools and prisons, et cetera. So that bill amended Article 3, Section 9, Paragraph 6 of the Constitution. And it allowed us to direct funds, but a very limited sliver up to 1% of the previous year's budget. And by the way, we're maxed out now. We're already spending that 1% on dedicated funds. I think that statute and that constitutional provision prevents us from changing any current dedicated funding or redirecting them, which I'm afraid this might be doing. So I don't know enough about it yet. I'm going to read it and see, but I wanted to alert you to that for you to also let's you and I have a conversation, or anybody else that knows.
Yes, sir. And I think going through that, because Representative Powell was who I referenced in the beginning on the constitutional amendment that he and Senator Huffstadler had worked on. And I think this is possibly where we'll get to the same conclusion, because what I think is that there's a possibility that has been violated already, and this gets us back to the dedicated funds. So yes, sir, absolutely.
Hallie, if you'll come speak in respect for committees that are coming in here behind us, like we want them to respect us. We're going to be out of here at 3:00. So have at it. You got a few minutes here and we welcome you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman,
fine.
members of the committee. My name is Allie Kelly. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization. And my nickname is Tires. Senator Summers gave me that nickname last year and I embrace it fully. The Ray was actually born out of LaGrange in West Point, Georgia. We operate now out of Atlanta and LaGrange. And our goal, our mission orientation is to help transportation agencies to build infrastructure and transportation that is advanced and what we define as net zero. By net zero, we mean zero waste, zero death, and zero carbon. And in this work that we do pursuing safer, cleaner, and more productive transportation infrastructure, our goal is to enable advanced mobility. So electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell, connected autonomous vehicles. And we're now working in 25 states. We have partnerships and projects that have been scaled from the state of Georgia through the Ray, with 32 agencies in those 25 states. So in a short period of time, we've grown into a national organization. We just had a call today earlier with a transportation agency in Texas about pavement and rubber modified asphalt. You can actually recycle scrap tire rubber into high performing asphalt. And about this, I can speak for an hour. I won't go into it, but we use rubber modified asphalt here in Georgia quite a lot. Rubber modified asphalt was first introduced to the market in the 1980s. So it's almost a 50-year technology, but it's not quite used by half of the US yet. It's a great opportunity to take trash, scrap tires, and turn them into a commodity. And if we're successful in developing end markets for scrap tires, they're no longer trash that people want to discard in your districts. They're commodities that people want to capitalize on in those end markets. And rubber modified asphalt is but one end use, one end market that can help us eliminate scrap tire piles and eliminate waste streams because it becomes a commodity being used in these end markets like rubber modified asphalt. I'm happy to continue to provide information to the committee, but I just want to clarify one thing. The Solid Waste Trust Fund is almost 100% funded by the tire fee. I think it's really important to understand that. The dollar on tire sales is providing 90 to 99% of the funding for the Solid Waste Trust Fund. The only other funding source is landfill fines. A portion of landfill fines that are not needed for remediation of landfills goes into the Solid Waste Trust Fund. So what you have to understand is that when Cardin Summers buys a tire in his district, he is told there is a dollar fee that we, the state of Georgia, are going to use to address tires. It goes into the Solid Waste Trust Fund with a bunch of other tire dollars, and then it gets spent on other uses that are not tire related. This is fraud. This is a fraud on the people of Georgia who are told that that dollar is a tire fee. If we allow it to continue to be used for non-tire related uses, and tire related uses also include the issues that tires contribute to in landfills. So landfill remediations, closures, post-closure plans, post-closure care, illegal scrap tire dump remediation, amnesty programs for local governments are all in sync and aligned with what consumers are being told at the register when they pay the dollar tire fee.
Well, before you get too far off the deep end
Yes,
on
sir.
that, I mean, the law is clear that we passed that this Solid Waste Trust Fund is for more than just scrap tires.
There are
So if the people didn't read the bill, then they're the ones that are confused, or if somebody's misrepresenting to them, but the legislature never did. In fact, we would be misrepresenting folks that care about litter and solid waste and wastewater. That was by statute going to also be addressed by this trust fund.
Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely correct. Over the years, Georgia law has been changed and amended to expand the scope of the Solid Waste Trust Fund. And Senator Robertson's bill is attempting to realign the original purpose of the Solid Waste Trust Fund with its overwhelming and primary funding source, which is the tire
But
fee.
we had a constitutional amendment after this was passed that said we can't change or redirect the funding because that would be conning the voters without a 2/3 vote to do that.
Yes, sir. And I heard your presentation of that information, and I would love to look into that and be in discussion with Senator Robertson after he has that
Yeah.
discussion with you. I respect that you're an attorney and
I-
would love
I
to hear
haven't
your
done a deep
opinion.
dive on it yet. It was brought to my attention in another subject matter and I started connecting the dots to this and it's concerning. All right. So do you know how much money we're collecting per year?
Yes, sir.
These tire fees, how much is it?
So in fiscal year 2022, this is taken from the EPD's own annual reports.
Right.
And this is the information, some of which Senator Robertson presented to the committee. In fiscal year 2022, 7.6 million of the tire fee was collected. 2.817 was appropriated, and that appropriation amount is relatively the same if you look from FY 2018 to FY 2022. In 2021, there was 7.6 million collected with 2.79 appropriated. And as Senator Robertson pointed out, in 2022, FY 2022, according to the annual report, expenditures on tires amounted to $674,553.
So 2 million is going to litter and solid waste and solid water disposal.
Some of that money is absolutely being spent on landfill remediation. The FY 2022 annual report doesn't get into specific amounts that were used. It does get into projected costs of closure and post-closure care of the landfills. But we know that there's some money that is being spent every fiscal year on landfill remediation. Unfortunately, the annual reports don't give us any information about the grant program, and the grant program is what is being used to fund litter abatement and plastics recycling programs, as well as hazardous materials recycling like Clorox. So I don't have any visibility in how much money is going out in FY 2022, 2021, and 2020, which are the annual reports that I reviewed myself today. But I can tell you that a new grant program was introduced for 2023. That grant program is a $2 million grant program. It's called the Recycling, Waste Reduction, and Diversion Grant. And included in that grant is our program equipment, right? This is equipment, collection bins, forklift, baler, front loader, roll-off carts, pulverizer, sorting lines for glass, organics, hazardous waste, and plastics. Nowhere in the materials for the new program that is $2 million, nowhere are tires mentioned. And so I think that we can expect that EPD is setting up programs to fund equipment purchases for non-tire purposes, even though the Solid Waste Trust Fund is funded almost entirely by the dollar tire fee.
All right, we're going to stop here. Thank you. Will you be back with us on Tuesday? I had 5 or 6 other speakers. If possible, please return on Tuesday. We'll continue where we left off.
It would be my pleasure. And thank you so
being
much
with
for the
us.
time and your
I hate to
attention.
cut you off, but we're trying to be respectful of other committees as well.
Appreciate you
Thank
so
you.
much.
All
Thanks.
right. We're adjourned.